All right, and welcome to the Balance Weekly Drop. We're doing a Sunday drop today. We've got some NASCAR on tap to talk about here in just a minute, and then we're going to roll right into the next segment with Adam Jividens, our college football partner in crime, and Ed Kratz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles and SI.com. Part two of our draft board. Then we're going to go back and look at who we drafted to analyze who we drafted, if we got it right, if we didn't get it right, and we're going to go through in the first round and give our grades. A little bit delayed on that, but it's going to be up today. But up next, right now, Steve Wilson of Speedway Digest, editor in chief of Speedway Digest, and our official NASCAR contributor. We roll on along and we roll into Texas this week. But first of all, Steve, how are you? Were you happy with the Kentucky Derby results?
Well, I mean, who couldn't look at the Kentucky Derby yesterday and see somebody that starts shotgun on the field,
Crazy.
and comes out at a 25-1 odds to win that thing yesterday. A little bit of issues trying to get the horses in there, and I guess I'm glad that the horse and the rider that got dumped off of were okay. So
Yeah.
unfortunately they had to scratch, but hey, look. Hey, I'll cover anything racing wise. I didn't really cover it yesterday. I did get to see it, so it was kind of fun.
I get it. I typically bet, and I think I told you this. I actually met my wife on Kentucky Derby 7 years ago, but we typically bet. I didn't get any bets done this week. Been kind of a crazy weekend, so I didn't get any bets done. But I saw where it's the first time there's ever been a female trainer for the winner of the Kentucky Derby. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no,
Woman power.
that's really cool. I know
Woman.
that's really cool. After 152 years, it just took a little while.
It took a little while to get things going. Well, let's take a look at yesterday's race. What a great race it was! I did get a chance to watch that. The Andy's Frozen Custard 340. You know what? They're all about the Andy's Frozen Custard there in Texas. It looks really good. I'm a big fan of frozen custard, so I'll have next time I'm around somewhere where there's an Andy's, I'll have to try it. But Kyle Larson took the checkered flag. Driving the JR Motorsports, and Larson held off teammate Justin Allgaier in a tense 20 lap sprint to the finish in his second O'Reilly Series win of 2026. So, first of all, what are your thoughts about Andy's frozen custard? And second of all, what are your thoughts of Kyle Larson winning the O'Reilly Parts Series at Texas?
I've never had Andy's frozen custard, so
Oh, okay,
we don't have any. I know we're even near us. I mean, we
okay.
saw them. I've seen them on my travels, but no, I've never stopped
Uh,
and had them. So I will say that I am a fan of an Oreo shake from Cookout. So that
oh, there you go.
that would be my preferable. We've got two competing cold dessert type deals going on in the sport. And my preference would be an Oreo cookie shake from Cookout.
I do love Oreo cookie shakes, but I've never been to Cookout. We don't have them here in Indianapolis, and I've been meaning to stop when I was down in North Carolina, and we just haven't done it yet. And I know it's a great place. But I've got a lot of colleagues that live in Nashville, and they just love it. They talk about it all the time. So it's certainly on my list. But I think we have a Sonic, and we have another frozen custard place, but we're a fan of Culver's cement mixer. You ever had them?
We don't have Culvers around us either. So I've never been to one.
There you go. Well, anyway, Kyle Larson gets the win. What are your thoughts about that?
Hey, look, Kyle Larson can win in something. That's the second time this year in the no app series that he's gone to victory lane. Yeah, I did get to catch some highlights. Kyle Larson, Justin Allgaier out there bumping and banging some fenders there on some restarts, trying to mess around with one another a little bit. So look, JRM out there doing what they do. They've done this all season long with everybody that they put in these cars between Kyle Larson, William Barnes, and Justin Allgaier, and all their regulars that they have in there. So it's just, it's just a repetitive, kind of deal for JRM. I know, unfortunately, for Corey Day, who's
Mm,
another Chevrolet driver. He was out of this thing, and
yeah.
then I did see that our Connor Zilic, who blew a tire out there, so that kind of ended his day out there a little bit. It ended up, I think, a lap or two down, something like that. But overall, JRM with a good day out there, followed right up by Sam Mayer and some other guys out there. I will say, this race was the first time since I saw this stat out there that it's been the first race since 1993 in this series that a Ford has not been entered into the race. And the last time that happened was at, excuse me, at Martinsville Speedway.
You okay?
Oh, sorry. I had something stuck in my throat and it did not want to
Oh,
play
okay.
nice while I was talking.
You know, get you a drink of water. That's fine. Yeah, and I totally. One of the things, and I'll go into a hot take here a little bit while you're getting a drink of water. Um, I've often thought that why, the purpose, the whole purpose, I'm still calling it the Xfinity race or what have you, the development race where we have these younger drivers or drivers who aren't quite ready to go into the Cup races. We see a lot of drivers graduate to the Cup races, great for them. But I always thought this series was designed to help drivers get to the next level. And I've never really been a big fan of drivers like Kyle Larson, who's a dominant. And it's almost like these teams use drivers like Kyle Larson's as ringers. You know, I just am not a big fan, and maybe you can help me understand the logic behind this, but I'm just not a big fan of Kyle Larson. Example, Kyle Larson. It could be any of the Cup racers racing in the O'Reilly Part Series. What are your thoughts on that?
This is something that for a long time that NASCAR has struggled with and grappled with over the years. You saw the winning of Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch,
Mhm.
name a lot of other drivers that have come into these lower series, and just Carson Hocevar, who won in the Truck Series,
Yeah.
on Friday night, so just it's just a continual thing that NASCAR has had to find ways to grapple with, and they've tried to do things such as limiting the number of races, and then they further limited it. And then they said, well, look, if you're a rookie in the Cup Series, we'll give you an expanded number out there so that you can continue honing your craft for the Cup Series. They've tried so many different examples and so many rules to try and fix this. And then fans have repeatedly, they're on two sides of the fence at the same time. And they both say, look, we don't like it when these drivers come down here. We want to see the up and coming drivers, etc., come out here and win. But then you have the same, fans that are out there that said, "Look, well, we also want to see some of the big name drivers come out here. Maybe we don't want to come out here on a Sunday and watch the Cup drivers, or maybe we got something else planned. And this is our way of being able to still see them in some respect. So it's something very hard that NASCAR has tried to grapple with over the last 20 years or so. And at the end of the day, a lot of these become business deals
Yeah.
where JRM and other cup teams that have affiliations in, whether it be truck like Spire did with Carson Hocevar, or Carl Larson, for example, yesterday in JRM. These are business deals that these companies to go out here and say, look, maybe we can't put our name on a Cup Series car, or whatever, but we want to see Kyle Larson, who's being sponsored. This is probably a bad example because both Carson Hocevar and Kyle Larson are being sponsored in the two wins this weekend by the same people that sponsored them in the Cup Series. But that's beside the point on this, is that there are still business deals out there where sponsors are like, look, we can't, we don't have the budget to put on a Cup car, but hey, look, if you can get Carl Larson or Carson Host or Kyle Busch or somebody to come down here to a lower series, we can put our name on these vehicles and get you, sponsored out there for that. The flip side to that is that when Kyle Larson Carson Hocevar this week can go out there and they're winning these trucks or cars. These teams are still competing for owner points at the end of the year, and that's why there's a repetition in JRM's cars. You've had the Kyle Larsons, William Byrons, etc. in those cars. Inspires trucks, you've had Carson Hocevar, Kyle Busch, etc. in those trucks, and they have. I'm sorry, Kyle Busch in
Hmm.
Inspires trucks
Right.
they're competing for owner points at the end of the year, which means more money for that team at the end of the year. So they're also on a business side for their perspective, looking and say, hey, look, if we have an opportunity to put somebody in our car or truck in a lower series that we can compete for owner points and ultimately money at the end of the year, these are all continue to be business deals. So NASCAR has tried to loosen that up a little bit. I mean, they don't want full-fledged Carl Larson running out there, Carl Busch running in trucks every week, but they try and find a happy medium, and I don't think that there's an answer to this.
Well, and you're right. I can see from the owner's aspect, from the business decision, it becomes a business decision. But maybe we stop calling it. Maybe the problem is solved real easily here. Let's just stop calling it a development series. If we want to bring you up from this other series, we will. But let's stop calling it a series where we're developing young drivers. We could go back and forth on that all day long. But yeah, Kyle Larson, great win, and we look for him to carry that over to Texas today. We'll talk about that when we get into our preview. But yeah, Kyle Larson, I had him to win. So I got made like $27 off of DraftKings yesterday. But then Justin Allgaier, let's talk about him for a second. I mean, always. I mean, just he never goes wrong. I mean, he's just a great driver. He's great to talk to. I love talking to him when he's here in Indianapolis. He finished second after winning stage one and leading 54 laps. Then Sam Mayer took third. And then Brett Cruz. Let's look at this guy, man. He is an up and coming. Now you talk about an up and coming, somebody who should be in this series. Finished fourth to collect $100,000 in the Dash for Cash bonus. But when you look at Justin Allgaier, Sam Mayer, and Brett Cruz on the podium there, what are your thoughts?
I think they said something yesterday, and I may have this wrong, that, Justin Allgaier has tried something like 21 times to win there at Texas Motor Speedway and has continued to come up short. And that may be the wrong number, but I know that it's a significant number out there that he's tried to win this race out there and just has continued to come up in these kind of, runner-up positions. Sam Mayer, I think once again with them, the Haas factory team, by moving over to Chevrolet, that has continued to really build that team up. We've seen both him and Sheldon Creed. I think he finished right outside the top five yesterday. And then Brett Cruz. This is somebody that really doesn't have a whole lot of experience in this series at all. He's been kind of flip flopping between ARCA trucks and this, and Texas is kind of a treacherous place out there for somebody to go out there and be able to come up and win that $100,000. And really, Justin Allgaier, we talked about him, I think, a couple of weeks ago as the king of this $100,000
Hmm.
deal. And
Yes.
had he been in this, he would have been once again right there, another $100,000 in his pocketbook. But at the end of the day, he wasn't in this thing. So Brett Cruz was able to go out there and not only take the $100,000, but come up with a good quality top five. Now I have to admit, I'd be remiss to say that Parker Rutzlaff, who finished fifth yesterday in Viking Motorsports, he and that team have come alive this season, and I know he's flip-flopped around some low budget teams over the last couple of years. But it seems like whatever they're doing out there, they've had good runs over the last couple of weeks. Top five this week. They partnered with the DEA and for some fentanyl type PSAs out there. But again, that team for some reason and over the last couple of weeks have really seemed to come alive.
I want to. I'm trying to remember who the driver was, so I apologize. Um, but I, there was there was a caution, and I believe it was a guy was a lap down. Somehow he came up and almost hit the safety truck, and then spun around, and the pace car had to make an action real quick. It was so close to wrecking the NASCAR spin. I was trying to think. I think it was Jake Garcia was trying to limp around the track after an incident on the back stretch where he got turned into the wall. I think that's who it was. But did you happen to see that? It's been all over social media. But did you happen to see that where almost hit the emergency vehicle driver, and then the Corvette had to make a move there and almost had its own little wreck. It was really really close. Did you happen to see that in the highlights?
No, I missed that one.
I'll get it over to you. It's crazy. It's
Okay.
crazy. Well, let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit more about yesterday's race. Obviously, it was a good race in Texas. Texas is a fast race, um, and so overall, what were your thoughts yesterday in the race in the recap? So you had Connor Zillage, who won stage two, and appeared to be the car to beat, really, but that turned out not to happen. In his lap 135, earned his chances for resulted in a 21st finish, and lots of chaos. The race was peppered with seven cautions, including a multi-car pileup on the opening lap that ended Corey Day's day, which I had him going in the top three. So overall, those storylines there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Connor Solich is somebody that we think of that last year won about a dozen races or something like that. So for him to go and come back to the series and be a lap down and blow a tire like that, through no fault of his own, that's just an abnormal day for him, I think, as a whole. And then unfortunately for Corey Day, who got his first career win, last week in Talladega, for to go from that, the highest of high, and blow an engine, I think what, one or two laps into this thing, that goes from the highest of highs in this sport, and just, it will give and it will take, and it took yesterday, where
Yeah.
he didn't even, kind of, that was kind of the end of that.
Well, let's move on over to the Cup race that's happening today here in just about an hour or so from when we're an hour and a half or so from when we're taping this afternoon segment. But the Worth 400 presented by Liqui Moly, I believe I said that right. And in Texas, surprise front row though. Spira Motorsports achieved an historic sweep of the front row. Carson Hocevar, which we know what he was able to do last week in Talladega. I'm still shocked that I haven't heard something from NASCAR that says, yeah, we're not going to be doing that type of a stand up and drive burnout anymore. That is not going to. I'm surprised they let him get through the week without saying that, without smacking his fingers a little bit. But yeah, great win for him. Captured his second career pole with a speed of 191.4340, and then followed by his teammate Daniel Suarez, somebody we haven't had a chance to talk about much this year, especially with his changeover. But what do you think about the front row with Aspire Motorsports? I also want to get your thoughts on Carson Hocevar's circus uh, act last week in Talladega.
Look, we can debate the the whole Spire thing and what they've been able to accomplish this season. Carson Hocevar, winning in trucks on Friday night. He won last week in Talladega. He's on the pole again today. Daniel Suarez, who's been through a number of teams and looking to rebound with Spire. That team, Spire as a whole, and we can go and look at the lawsuit and some of the things like that JGR has alleged against Spire Motorsports and why they are doing so well this season. But look, regardless of whether that information was moved over there or not, I'm not going to weed into that a whole lot. But the accusations are out there that the reason why they are doing so well is because of former employees taking information, and that lawsuit is currently being litigated, from that side of that point. But Spire Motorsports has a lot of backing. They have worked for years to come from an underfunded team to a mid-tier type team to what looks like they're starting to challenge some of these bigger teams now. And I think that goes in kind of, if it's, I will make this kind of, hot take comment on this. If Spire Motorsports and Carson Hocevar were running 25 and 26 and 30th every week, JGR would never even probably have filed a lawsuit against them. I mean, that's just kind of my hot take on this. I mean, I'm not going to say that they would or they wouldn't, but that's just kind of my take of the thing, based on the accusations that continue to fly around. I just think that they see them now as a threat, and they are in a lot of ways. I mean, but Carson Hocevar as a driver, I mean, we've seen what he's done in the Truck
Mhm.
Series, and we've seen what he's done with underfunded teams in the lower series, and being able to go out there and win races in these lower series with lower and underfunded teams out there. So you can't take away from his driving ability, and he is somebody. He is definitely an up and coming driver right now. He is
Mhm.
leading the charge for Spire Motorsports, and I know that Michael McDowell is over there, and he's really the veteran of this thing, and being inspired for the last couple of years. But it seems to be that Carson Hocevar right now is taking that lead for Spire. He's taking an opportunity that he has, and he's making the most of it because look, his sponsors, Chili's, and all those that are want to be on the car and be associated with him. They want to continue to see kind of those moments that we saw last week at Talladega, and him hanging out of the car doing burnouts and doing cool things that we just don't normally see from drivers. And I
Yeah.
think that's what really makes him relatable in a lot of ways, is that he's not the vanilla driver. He doesn't just go out there, jump out the car, maybe do a little burnout, say something on the front stretch, and drive off to victory lane. No, he goes out there and he makes it memorable for
Yeah.
for the
Sure.
people watching.
Most definitely. Well, drivers we're watching today, Chris Buescher starts third at his home track. Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe, and obviously Denny Hamlin he's right there in the thick of it all for the chase. He's sitting at a number two. Maybe this is his year where he gets his championship. But going back to Spiral. I don't necessarily want to beat a dead horse here. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's probably not politically correct to say anymore. But Spyro Spyro's dominance is Spyro Motorsports. Are they officially now? Can we say Spyro Motorsports officially is a top tier team after sweeping the Texas front row?
Look, I think they're still on their way up. I think that remains to be seen in a lot of ways. They have to be able to continue to compete against the giants out there, especially the Hendrick Motorsports of the world. And I know they did get their engines from them, so that's something that they have top tier equipment out there. There's no doubt about that. It's just how can they continue to sustain this, top of the mountain type deal. And I mean, there's a lot of people nipping at them. Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe, top, rolling up top five later today. GGR continues to be a threat up there. Toyota as a whole continues to be a threat. They've won 7 races this year between two organizations that are both affiliated with one another. So I mean, it's hard to say that I think Carson Hocevar, Daniel Suarez, Fire Motorsports as a whole, they're up and coming. I don't see them as a mid-tier team anymore. I don't
Mhm.
see them as a lower funded, back of the pack type deal team. They are definitely an up and coming team, but they still have to deal with the JGRs and the 23XIs and Hendrick Motorsports in the world. And I think that if they can sustain that, then yeah, they're going to continue to be a dominant threat week in and week out.
Well, a couple more things here. We only got you for a few more minutes. Steve Wilson, editor in chief of Speedway Digest, our official NASCAR contributor. We got Bubba Wallace and William Bryan will start from the rear, missing qualifying due to incidents and mechanical issues. And then Austin Dillon also failed to set a time due to an engine change. All of those guys are top tier drivers, if you will, are to back of the pack. Are they going to be able to fight their way to their front? Are they going to be able to? Are they just going to have to just finish the race and the best they can and not really try to win this race? You think? What are your thoughts on those drivers facing the back of the? group.
Look, Austin Dillon blew, another engine out there. So I think, when it comes to them and RCR, ECR engines as a whole, I don't, they're getting the opportunity to change the engine, so they're going to start at the rear. The one I think you have to look at when it comes to that organization is Kyle Busch has just a disaster of a year. He's going to roll
Yeah.
off six, but is there something that it was in that engine of Austin Dillon's that may come into play with Kyle Busch? He really needs some kind of light out there that makes the day shine a little bit brighter for him and that number 18, because it's been just a complete disaster for them. Bubba Wallace, you look at him. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people thought last week, and he seems to become a drafting style. He's really good at it, and we looked at Bubba Wallace last week as maybe somebody that might win in Talladega, and he just got taken out in a just massive accident out there. 24, 25, 26 cars or something like that on the back stretch out there that just precipitated into mass chaos out there. And William Byron, he had a disaster a couple of weeks ago at Bristol Motor Speedway. So look, I know that team is trying to still rebound from that, and that's really just abnormal from both a two-time winner of the Daytona 500 and somebody that's won the regular season championship. So I think that team is still trying to rebound from that also.
Well, one more thought here, and then we do have to let you go here. But there's a lot of debate around the horsepower debate with the ongoing push for more horsepower, targeting the 750 horsepower to improve racing on a mile-and-a-half track like Texas. Is the current package doing enough to increase that horsepower? That debate's been going on for a few weeks now.
No, I don't know. We're not getting there fast enough. I think we need to see this on short tracks. We need to see this on mile and a halves. We continue to see, Martinsville, Wilkesboro, Bristol, Richmond, etc. That it's very hard to go out there and pass a lot of times because there's just not that power to be able to move off of those real tight corners and very short straightaways. I think yes, I think that they need to continue to look into these higher horsepowers. They've had opportunities. I think there's opportunities out there to continue to test this type of stuff. You can use the class. I know that there's some debate about whether the class goes back to Daytona or not, or whether it stays at Bowman Gray next year. But I think there's opportunities to continue testing higher horsepower packages out there. Maybe going back to a 900 horsepower motor
Mhm.
is exactly what a lot of people continue to ask for week in and week out.
Steve Wilson, editor-in-chief of Speedway Digest, jumping on with us before the race out in Texas this afternoon. We'll see how that plays out for Kyle Larson and the like. But Steve, where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
You can follow us at Speedway Digest on X, Facebook.com/Speedway Digest, and SpeedwayDigest.com.
All right, buddy, we appreciate you. We'll be talking with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.